Welcome to Congregation Beit Mecca, where our goal is to fulfill our call to have the testimony that Messiah Yeshua is the Redeemer of Israel and to guard the commandments of Torah. The holiness of the day. Moses rejoiced in the gift of his portion that you placed on his head when he stood before you on Mount Sinai. He brought down 2 stone tablets in his hand, on which is inscribed the observance of the Sabbath. So it is written in your Torah, and the children of Israel shall keep the Sabbath, to make the Sabbath an eternal covenant for their generations. Between me and the children of Israel, it is a sign forever, that in 6 days Yahavah made heaven and earth, and on the 7th day he rested and was refreshed. You did not give it, Yahavah our El, to the nations of the lands, nor did you make it the inheritance, our king, of the worshippers of graven idols. And in its contentment the uncircumcised shall not abide. For to Israel, your people, have you given it in love, to the seed of Jacob, whom you have chosen. They shall rejoice in your kingship, those who observe the 7th. They will all be satisfied and delighted from your goodness, and the 7th you found favor in it and sanctified it. Most coveted of days you called it, a remembrance of the act of creation. Shem Kevod Malkuto Leolam Vayed. Hear, O Israel, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh is one. Blessed is the name of his glorious kingdom for all eternity. Amen. Vahavta et Yahweh Elohecha v'kol lavavka uv'kol nafshika uv'kol me'adeka v'hayu hadavarim ha'ele asher anochi masavaka hayom alaveka v'shina tam levaneka v'dibar ta bam v'shiftaka v'vateka uv'lektika v'derek uv'shachbaka uv'chameka Ukshartam le'ot al yadeka v'hayu letod fot beinaneka uktav tam al mezuzot beteka uvisharaka. And you shall love Yahweh your Elohim with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. And have these words which I command you this day be upon your heart. And you shall teach them diligently to your children, and speak of them when you sit in your house, when you walk by the way, when you retire, and when you arise, and you shall bind them for a sign upon your hand, and let them be frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them on the doorposts of your house and upon your gates. Vahavta le'raka kamoka, and you shall love your neighbor as yourself. Amen. Please join us for praise and worship.
Sing praise, sing praise, sing praise. Forever Yah is faithful, forever Yah is strong, forever Yah is with us, forever. Forever Kadosh, Kadosh, Ken Adonai Sebaot. There's only one word that's in mind. There's only one word to describe. There's only one word comes to mind. There's only one word to describe. Holy, holy is Adonai Almighty. Holy, holy is Adonai Almighty. In Orecha Mochata Kadosh, Kadosh. In Orecha Mochata Kadosh, Kadosh. In Orecha Mochata Kadosh, in Orecha Mochata Kadosh, Kadosh. There is no one like you. You are holy, holy. There is no one like you. You are holy, holy. Kadosh, Kadosh, Ken Adonai Sebaot. 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 There is a name I call upon. There is a name by which I'm saved. Salvation is your name. Salvation is your name. There is a Lamb who bore our sins. He bled and died Salvation is your name. Sing it again. Salvation is your name. Salvation is your name. At the name of Yeshua, on every knee shall bow, and every tongue will confess that He is Lord. Salvation is your name. Salvation is your name. Yeshua is your name. Yeshua is your name. Yeshua is your name. Holy Father, we are so grateful for the sacrifice you made for us. We pray daily that you continue to guide us and watch over us and bless us. And we pray that each and every one of us would know you here today intimately. I pray for this service. I pray for this congregation. I pray that you would walk with us through the rest of this Shabbat. In your name we pray. Amen. Oh, yeah.
As usual, we're working on the slides. So give Ken a minute. It's not, it didn't transfer over again. Okay, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. Sorry for the technical difficulties. There is to be one Torah for the native born and for the stranger who sojourns among you. Bamidbar, Numbers 15:16. And if you will join me for the Ayin Kamoka. Ayin Kamoka Velohim Yehovah V'yein Kemaseka Melkuka Melkut Kol Amim Umem Sheltaka Ve'kol Dor Vador Yehovah Malek Yehovah Malak Yehovah Yimlok Leolam Vayed Yehovah Leo Mitain Yehovah Yivarek Edamo Shalom. There is none like you among their gods, Yehovah, and there is nothing like your works. Your kingdom is a kingdom throughout all generations, and your dominion is forever. Yehovah reigns, Yehovah has reigned, Yehovah will reign forever and ever. Yehovah will give strength to his people, Yehovah will bless his people with peace. When the ark would travel, Vayehi ben Zoharon, Ve'yomer Moshe, Kuma Yehovah, Vayafutsu Oiveka, Vayanusu Mesaneka, Mepaneka, Ki Mizeon, Teze Torah, Ki Mizeon, Teze Torah, Udavar Yehovah, Me'Yerushalayim, Baruch Shenatan, Torah, Torah, Baruch Shenatan, Torah, Torah, Le'amo Yisrael, Mikadushu Ato. When the ark would travel, Moshe would say, Arise, Yahovah, and let your enemies be scattered, and let those who hate you flee from you. For the Torah will go forth from Zion, and the word of Yahovah from Yerushalayim. Blessed is he who gave the Torah to his people Yisrael in his holiness.
Torah, Devar Yahovah, Hine HaTorah, Hine Yeshua, Hine Huvah, Devar Kaim, Hine HaTorah, Hine Yeshua, Hine Huvah, Devar Kaim.
May the Father of compassion have mercy on the nation that is born by him, and may he remember the covenant of the spiritually mighty. May he rescue our souls from the bad times and upbraid the evil inclination to leave those born by him. Graciously make us an eternal remnant and fulfill our requests in good measure for salvation and mercy. May he help shield and save all who take refuge in him. Now let us respond, Amen. All of you have ascribed greatness to our Elohim and give honor to the Torah. Arise, Bil ben Yaakov, an Israelite, to come to the bima to read from the Torah. Blessed is he who gave the Torah to his people Yisrael in his holiness. Baruchu et Yehovah Hamvarak.
Baruch Yehovah Hamarak Le'olam Vayed.
Baruch atah Yehovah Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bakar benu mikol ha'amin, v'natan lanu et Torato. Baruch atah Yehovah. Notein ha-Torah. Amen. Blessed are you, Yehovah our Elohim, King of the universe, who has chosen us from all peoples and given us his Torah. Blessed are you, Yehovah, giver of the Torah.
The reading this morning will be from Shemot, chapter 24, verses 1 through 15, and the Maftir, verses 16 through 18. And Moshe, he said, "Come up to Yehovah, you and Aharon, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and you shall bow yourselves from a distance. But Moshe shall draw near to Yehovah by himself, and let them not draw near, nor let the people go up with him." And Moshe came and related to the people all the words of Yehovah and all the right rulings. And all the people answered with one voice and said, "All the words which Yehovah has spoken, we shall do." And Moshe wrote down all the words of Yehovah, and rose up early in the morning, and built a slaughter place in the foot of the mountain, and 12 standing columns for the 12 tribes of Israel. And he sent young men of the children of Israel, and they offered ascending offerings and slaughterings of peace offerings to Yehovah of bulls. And Moshe took half the blood and put it in basins, and half the blood he sprinkled on the slaughter place. And he took the book of the covenant and read in the hearing of the people, and they said, "All that Yehovah has spoken we shall do and obey." And Moshe took the blood and sprinkled it on the people and said, "See the blood of the covenant which Yehovah has made with you concerning all of these words." And Moshe went up, also Aharon, Adab, and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel. And they saw the Elohim of Israel, and under his feet, like a paved work of sapphire stone, and like the heavens for brightness. Yet he did not stretch out his hand against the chiefs of the children of Israel. And they saw Elohim, and they ate and drank. And Yehovah said to Moshe, "Come up to me on the mountain, and be there while I give you the tablets of stone, and the Torah, and the command which I have written to teach them." And Moshe arose with his assistant Yehoshua, and Moshe went up to the mountain of Elohim. And he said to the elders, "Wait here for us until we come back to you. And see, Aharon and Hur are with you. Whoever has matters, let him go to them." And Moshe went up into the mountain, and a cloud covered the mountain. And the esteem of Yehovah dwelt on Mount Sinai, and the cloud covered it for 6 days. And on the 7th day he called to Moshe out of the midst of the cloud. And the appearance of the esteem of Yehovah was like a consuming fire on the top of the mountain, before the eyes of the children of Israel. And Moshe went into the midst of the cloud and went up into the mountain. And it came to be that Moshe was on the mountain 40 days and 40 nights.
The closing Torah blessing.
Baruch atah Yehovah, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Torah emet,
V'kaye olam nata b'kenu, Baruch atah Yehovah. Notain ha-Torah.
Blessed-
Amen. Blessed are you, Yahweh our Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us a Torah of truth and has planted eternal life in our midst. Blessed are you, Yahweh, giver of the Torah. He who blessed our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, may he bless Bil ben Yaakov. He has come up to read from the Torah in honor of Yahovah and his word. As a reward for this, may the Holy One, blessed is he, protect him and rescue him from every trouble and distress, from every plague and illness, and may he send blessing and prosperity in his every endeavor, together with all Yisrael, his brethren. Now let us respond, Amen. Please join us in the Vezot. Vezot HaTorah, Asher Sham Moshe, Lifnei B'nei Yisrael al Pei Yehovah Biad Moshe. And this is the Torah that Moshe placed before the children of Israel at the command of Yehovah through Moshe's hand. Return, O Yehovah, to the countless thousands of Israel. Amen. You may be seated, and now I would like to call up Dennis Mandan to read from the Haftarah. If you'll join us in the opening Haftarah blessings.
Baruch atah Yehovah Eloheinu melech haolam asher bakar b'nviim tovim v'rezav v'rahim haner amarim be'emet. Baruch atah Yehovah Haboker Batorah, Uv Moshe Abdo, Uv Yisrael Amo, Uv Invei Hayamet Vazedek. Blessed are you, Yehovah our Elohim, King of the universe, who has selected good prophets and was pleased with their words which were spoken truthfully. Blessed are you, Yehovah, who chooses the Torah, your servant Moshe, your people Israel, and the prophets of truth and righteousness. Amen. So we're going to be reading from Jeremiah 34, 8 through 22, and then we will go to 33, 25 through 26. This is the word, and this word came to Jeremiah from Adonai after King Zedekiah had made a covenant with all the people in Jerusalem to emancipate them. Everyone who had a male or a female slave who was a Hebrew was to let him go free. None was to keep as a slave a fellow Yehudim. All the leaders and all the people listened who had entered into the covenant, wherein every one was to free his male and female slaves and not keep them in bondage any longer. They listened and let them go, but afterwards they changed their minds. They made the male and female slaves whom they had freed return, and they brought them back into subjection as slaves. Therefore this word of Adonai came to Jeremiah from Adonai. Here's what Adonai, the God of Israel, says: When I brought your ancestors out of the land of Egypt, where they lived as slaves, I made this covenant with them. At the end of 7 years, every one of you is to set free his brother Hebrew, who has been sold to you and has served you 6 years. You are to let him go free from you. But your ancestors did not listen to me or pay any attention. Now you repented. You did what is right from my point of view when each of you proclaimed freedom to his fellow, and you made a covenant before me in the house bearing my name. But then you changed your minds. You profaned my name when each of you took back his male and female slaves, whom you had set free to live as they wished, and brought them back into subjection as your slaves. Therefore, here's what Adonai says. You did not heed me and proclaim freedom, each to his brother. And wait a minute. Sorry. I'm going to go back to beginning of 16. I think I skipped something. But then you changed your minds. You profaned my name when each of you took back his male and female slaves whom you had set free to live as they wished, and brought them back into subjection as your slaves. Therefore, here's what Adonai says. You did not heed me and proclaim freedom, each to his brother and each to his neighbor. So now I proclaim for you a freedom, says Adonai. For sword, plague, and famine, I will make you an object of horror to all the kingdoms of the earth. As for the men who violated my covenant by not living up to the conditions of the covenant which they made in my presence, when they cut the calf in two and passed between its parts, the leaders of Yehuda, the leaders of Jerusalem, the officials, the Kohanim, and the people of the land who passed between the parts of the calf, I will hand them over to their enemies, hand them over to those who seek their lives, and their corpses will become food for the birds in the air and wild animals. Zedekiah, king of Yehuda, and his officials I will hand over to their enemies, to those who seek their lives, and to the army of the king of Babel, which was withdrawn. I will give the order, says Adonai, and cause them to return to this city. They will attack it, capture it, burn it to the ground, and will make the cities of Yehuda desolate and uninhabited. 33, 25 to 26. Here's what Adonai says. If I have not established my covenant with day and night and fixed the laws for sky and earth, then I will also reject the descendants of Yaakov and of my servant David, not choosing from his descendants people to rule over the descendants of Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, for I will cause their captives to come back, and I will show them compassion. Amen.
Closing Haftorah blessings.
Baruch atah Yehovah, Eloheinu melech haolam, Zor kol ha'amim, Zedek b'kol hadaro, Ha'el ha'neman, Ha'omer ve'oseh, Hamdabar u'kayam, Shekol devarav, Et met va'zedek, Ni'aman, Atahu Yehovah Eloheinu, V'ni'amin berekah, V'davar echad mivareka, Akol lo shurekam, Ki el melech ni'aman, Bereka manata, Baruch atah Yehovah, Ha'el ha'neman, Be'kol devarav. Blessed are you, Yehovah Elohim, King of the universe, Rock of all eternity, faithful in all generations, who says and does, who speaks and makes it come to pass, all of whose words are true and righteous. Faithful are you, Yehovah Elohim, and faithful are your words, for not one word of yours is turned back unfulfilled, for you are a faithful El and King. Blessed are you, Yehovah, the Elohim, who is faithful in all his words.
He who blessed our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, may he bless Dennis Ben Dan, because he has come up to read from the Haftarah. As a reward for this, may the Holy One, the Father of our Messiah, blessed is he, protect him and rescue him from every illness, and may he send blessing and success in his every endeavor, together with all Israel, his brethren. Now let us respond, Amen. Thank you. And now I would like to call up Jared Ben Avraham to read from the second writings. If you'll join us in the opening blessings for the second writings. Baruch atah Yehovah, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu Mashiach Yehoshua, v'hakatavim shel talmidin. Baruch atah Yehovah, noten ha-brit ha-Torah. Blessed are you, Yahovah our Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us Messiah Yehoshua and the writings of the Talmudin. Blessed are you, Yahovah, giver of the covenant of the Torah.
The readings, Matthew 17, 1 through 11. And after 6 days, Yeshua took Kepha and Yaakov and Yohanan his brother and brought them up on a high mountain by themselves. And he was transformed before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his garments became as white as the light. And see, Moshe and Eliyahu appeared to them, talking with him. And Kepha answered, said to Yeshua, Master, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, let us make here 3 booths, one for you, one for Moshe, and one for Eliyahu. While he was still speaking, see, a bright cloud overshadowed them, and see, a voice came out of the cloud, saying, This is my Son, the beloved, in whom I did delight, hear him. And when the taught ones heard, they fell on their faces and were much afraid. But Yeshua came near and touched them and said, Rise and do not be afraid. And having lifted up their eyes, they saw no one but Yeshua only. And as they were coming down from the mountain, Yeshua commanded them, saying, Do not mention the vision to anyone until the Son of Adam is raised from the dead. And his taught ones asked him, saying, Why then do the scribes say that Eliyahu has to come first? And Yeshua answered and said to them, Eliyahu is indeed coming first and shall restore all.
The closing blessings for the second writings. Baruch atah Yehovah, Eloheinu melech haolam, asher natan lanu hadavar haemet, v'kayei olam nata b'tkenu, Baruch atah Yehovah, asher natan lanu Mashiach Yehoshua, v'halkatavim hal talmidin. Blessed are you, Yahovah our Elohim, King of the universe, who has given us a word of truth and has planted eternal life in our midst. Blessed are you, Yahovah, who has given us the Messiah and the writings of the Talmudin. He who has blessed our forefathers, Abraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, may he bless Jared ben Abraham, because he has come up to read from the second writings in honor of Messiah and his teachings. As a reward for this, may the Holy One, the Father of our Messiah, blessed is he, protect him and rescue him from every trouble and distress, from every plague and illness, and may he send blessings and success in his every endeavor, together with all Yisrael, his brethren. Now let us respond, Amen. Thank you. If you'll please stand for the Etz Chaim. Etz Chaim hi l'makazim ki ba v'tom he'ameha u'shar derakeha darkei noam ekol nativoteha shalom Hashivanu Yehovah Aleik Almanashuva Kadesh Kadesh Yameinu Kadesh Yameinu Kekedem. It is a tree of life to those who take hold of it, and those who support it are praiseworthy. Its ways are the ways of pleasantness, and all its paths are peace. Bring us back, Yahovah, to you, and we shall come. Renew our days as of old. This concludes the Torah service, and you may be seated. All right, Shabbat Shalom again, everyone. Isn't it nice to have a Sabbath break? I think people don't know what they're missing by not enjoying it. So we are in Parsha Mishpatim, and this is just after the 10 Commandments were given, according to some. And it starts in Exodus chapters 21, 2, 3, and 4. And it means judgments. So Mishpatim means rulers or ordinances, and it's like the act of deciding a case, and comes from the root shafat, which means to judge. And in Hebrew, it actually starts out Va'ele ha-mishpatim. And everybody remember what a vav is? It's a connecting article. So it is an and. So I know our scriptures say these are the right rulings, but it's actually saying and these are the right rulings. And the whole point of that is it's connecting the previous statements to what's going on here. Yeah, and these are the right rulings which you are to set before them. That's 21:1. So Yahovah is actually speaking to Moshe. So we really have to back up to chapter 20, verse 22, where it says that. And Yahovah said to Moshe, say this to the children of Israel. Remember, all the people saw the thundering, lightning flashes, the voice of the shofar, and the mountain smoking. And they said they were afraid and stood back at a distance and said to Moshe, you speak with us and we hear, but let not Elohim speak with us lest we die. And Moshe said to the people, do not fear, for Elohim has come to prove you, and in order that his fear be before you, so that you do not sin. So the people stood at a distance, but Moshe drew near the thick darkness where Elohim was. And then this picks up in the part that it starts out with. In chapter 20 and 22, it's actually discussing laws between man and Elohim, and specifically how to or how not to worship him. So to recap, it's saying, you do not make me mighty ones of silver, and you do not make me mighty ones of gold for yourselves. When you make a slaughter place, make it of earth, and you shall slaughter on it your ascending offerings and your peace offerings, your sheep and your cattle. In every place where I cause my name to be remembered, I shall come to you and bless you. And if you make me a slaughter place of stone, do not build it with cut stone, for if you use your chisel on it, you have profaned it. Nor do you go up by steps to my slaughter place, lest your nakedness be exposed. So that's how he's instructing how he wants to be worshipped. He's setting out some rules there. And then it goes into this Mishpatim, which are actually the right rulings, which are to be set before the people. And 21 begins with rulings for a Hebrew slave. How many people have a bad connotation when you hear the word slave? I mean, I think we all kind of have a bad concept of it. But the way it's really described, it's more of like an employer-employee relationship. This is a voluntary service where these people might have become in debt, and they're going to the service to become out of debt, and then it gives a bunch of rules of how they're to be treated, the amount of time they're to be kept, when they're supposed to be released. So, and consider that these rules for the new nation of Israel is beginning with the lowest class of people, the slave and the servant. So Yahovah is saying how he wants to be worshipped, and then for those that are going to end up being slaves, he's actually starting out with how they're supposed to be treated first. Remember, they just came out of Egypt. They've been mistreated for a certain amount of time, and this would have been a really good instruction tool. It's also showing you how much the Father cares for what we could say the least among them. Because we all know by this connotation of what a slave means, that's what's happened to people who don't follow his instructions. People were mistreated. There's a lot of abuse. So Yahovah is establishing the most basic right, and it's the preservation of his family. And that's actually referring to the slave. If he comes in by himself, he goes out by himself. If he comes in married, then his wife shall go out with him. So right there's rights established for the slave and his family. And at the same time, it protects the interest of the owner. Because it goes on to say, if his master gives him a wife and she has borne him sons or daughters, the wife and the children are the master's, and he goes out by himself. But the servant can choose to stay. Remember, in the New Testament, second writings, the idea of becoming a bondservant is not a negative thing at all. We really want to be a bondservant, and it's all based on love because of the benefits you get of serving the most righteous master. You choose to be in a relationship where all you want to do is serve him. So verse 5, it's stating even he can choose this life. And that's why I was saying that this concept can be more like our employment today than the stereotypical idea of slavery. So the norm for American families today is for each person to separate daily and voluntarily give their time and energy away. It goes right to the heart of a family unit, and our culture has devised this system where we all separate and go and do things that you might not necessarily want to do. There's a lot of reasons we do it. You know, we don't want to think of it as slavery. We choose these jobs we have, we choose these vocations, but it's all for the greater good. The whole point is you want to provide for your family, you want to have a house for your family, you want to be able to feed your family, you want to be able to take care of your family. So actual slavery without the interest of the servant is still a problem in the world today. Forced labor, debt bondage, child labor, and worst of all, human trafficking. And then I found this statistic that the Department of the State from last year's report says nearly 25 million people worldwide are a victim of human trafficking today. And when you even, I mean, we're in a modern society in America, and we're so blessed with so many ways. And there's so many issues in countries that aren't as fortunate as us, where these people are tricked into labor and bondage and become slaves to their situation and just can't get out of it. And then go ahead. Sure, yeah, not to discredit anything that's going on here. But it can become generational too, where these people just cannot get out of this system. And it's just abuse. It's people who do not have concern for the lowest among the society to help, to establish it. I mean, this is the difference. Our Father is trying to set up a nation of people who care about these things. He saw what all the nations did that were in the land. And remember, he says this is why he's kicking them out, because of the things they did. It wasn't because Israel was righteous. It's because of the behavior of those nations. He's getting rid of them and giving them the land. Verse 7 goes into the right of redemption to the female slave if the master does not betroth her. And it says, and when a man sells his daughter to be a female servant, she does not go out as the male servants do. She's just not sent out into the world. Remember, women, the widows, and the girls, the young, the orphans, they're all taken care of. The system is set up to take care of the least of these. In a society like that, it's a male-dominated society, and if they didn't, in a sense, have a man that was a covering that provided for them, they were just out on the streets and nobody was taking care of them. And again, we can think of images of today where people are like that because they're trying to do it on their own. They don't have a covering. They don't have, look at the support system we have here of just a group of people who want to worship the Father on the way He says to be worshiped, to show up on the Sabbath. I mean, we all know if there's a need here, we're going to pull together and try and help that person. Also, there's people we actively look for things to do to go out and be a light and share the Father's graciousness that we've received to other people who are still lost in the world. The whole point of this is looking out for the less fortunate. Oh, what did I say? And if you marry, okay, so he can actually even offer, if he doesn't betroth her, he could have his son marry her. But if that happens, she's to become like a daughter of Israel. That's not to be treated as a slave. It's to be treated as a free woman who freely chose to marry this person. So it's really a nice system. I mean, we hear that word slavery and we think it's a horrible thing. Well, if you don't understand the concept of what slavery means, you're just going to go with that characterization of what you think it is instead of learning what the Father intends. And that's really the point of all this. When we slow down and study and pick apart what He's telling us and how to behave, we are getting exposed to the Father's heart, and this is how we get to know Him. And if we love Him, we'll keep His commandments. So if we look at the whole Parsha, we can group it with similar rules. Like if you look at this, chapters 21 through 24, there's a lot. I think it said, I saw there was 53 laws in this. I forget the ratio. 30 negative, 23 positive. Might have been what it was. I don't remember. It's one of those two, vice versa, either way. But so there's a lot that's kind of we absorb, and it might not seem like there's an order or a system to it, but people have done studies, and you can look at this when you that's the whole point of slowing down with Scripture and learning some of this stuff. There's a way to group these together and look at them to where it's more digestible. That's the same reason we do the Parsha each week. There's a lot to learn in Scriptures, but if we just take a few chapters a week and study them, then the next year we can move on to deeper thoughts, more things that we didn't understand this year. It's building blocks. So 21 through 22:17 turns out to be cases of judgment, something that a house of judgment, which in Hebrew is called a Beit Din, would decide. So these are like court cases. These are scenarios that happen, and then there's a ruling that would be passed for this is how you decide when this type of scenario happens. 12 through 27 are all person-to-person circumstances. So when it starts out there, this is after the Hebrew slave, then we move on to the new section with kind of the judgments. This is how, when one person treats another person, and if a problem arises, this is how you would have to decide this. And they're pretty severe things. I mean, he who strikes a man so that he dies shall certainly be put to death. And if you look, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, just in 12 through 7, in those 5 verses, there's 4 times somebody is put to death because of the behavior that happened. So if a person strikes a person, they're put to death. If someone lies in wait, but if he did not lie in wait, that's where the city of refuge is available. If you plan ahead and act presumptuously and kill your neighbor, that person is put to death. He who strikes his father or mother shall be put to death. He who kidnaps a man shall be put to death. And he who curses his father or mother shall be certainly put to death. And again, this is what the Father says. This is how he wants his people to be treated. So it would do you good to slow down and really learn, what does he mean by these statements? In 12, the term strike is from the Hebrew word nakah, and it means to disable, hit, slay, or kill. So we read it as, he who strikes a man so that he dies shall certainly be put to death. And that's the meaning of that word. If you disable him, hit him, slay him, kill him, all that is intertwined in the meaning of that Hebrew word nakah. And it's good to go over that because there's a lot of terms for death, for dying, for killing, for murder. It's, even right there in English, I said 4 different words, but it all essentially means kind of the same thing. It's just what this is getting at to is the heart of the matter. What did the person intend? Was it an accident or wasn't it intentional? In 14, the word harag, meaning kill or murder again, results in muth, death. So, but a man who acts presumptuously against his neighbor to kill him, that's harag, by treachery, you are to take him even from my slaughter place to die, moot, death. You guys heard that term, the point is moot? I think that's where it comes from. It's the same concept. It's dead. There's nothing to be done about it. But again, look at how serious the Father is for this. What is this slaughter place for? But for appeasing the Father and making offerings, peace offerings, to approach him into his prescribed way of drawing closer to him. So it's saying right there's a man who could have done this evil deed who thinks he can appease the Father by going up and making slaughtering. They're saying, if you find out about this, no, take him even from the slaughter place and put him to death. I mean, he's really serious about this stuff. In 15, the word again is nakah, and it means, let me see, in 15, he who strikes his father or his mother shall certainly put to death. That's nakah, that word strike again. In 16, kidnap actually means to steal, and for the person that stole, that kidnaps, it results in death. Yeah, Wendy? That's the next one coming up, 17. And he who curses his father or his mother shall certainly be put to death. So curse is the word kalal, and it's defined as diminished substance, lessen material things. That's supposed to be slight, not sight. To be slight, be trifling, treat with contempt or dishonor. So if you do this to your parents, then it says you will be put to death. So yeah, it does say that. And that's what I mean. In Hebrew, what do we think it means to just curse somebody? We're not witches here. We're not putting a spell on people and cursing them. But is it just a verbalization, or is it in your actions and how you treat people? Remember, the Father's all about authority and a system set up where it's honor and shame. And you do not shame those that are above you. They always do honor. It's a way he wants his people and his family to behave. 21 goes on in 28 through 32. It changes from the person-to-person circumstances to property-to-person issues. And this is talking about an ox goring or the death penalty. An ox goring can involve the death penalty for an owner. And that depends if the ox had done it before, or if this was the first time. There's different ways to look at it. If the owner knew about it, that his ox gored people and did nothing about it, and it does it again, If the ox was previously in the habit of goring, and its owner has been warned, and he has not kept it confined so that it has killed a man or woman, the ox is stoned, and the owner is also put to death. That would be neglect. I mean, if you know that it's a dangerous situation and you're not out, we are our brother's keeper. That's the whole concept. We are supposed to look out for those less fortunate. We're supposed to help. We're always supposed to be available. And it carries into your animals and how you treat their confinement based on if they're dangerous or not. 33, this is still chapter 21. 33 through 36 is property to property instances. And that's broken down by, so a man has a pit, and in his pit, another person's ox might fall into it. So the pit is one man's property or his property, and the ox is another man's property. So there's actually a system of how these, when you start looking at these, it just seems like a lot of jumble with how they're presented. But we went from person to person, person to property. Now it's property to property. 21 through 4 is stealing. Was it? 21, 1 through 4 is stealing. So it's back to person, but it's certainly not as serious as a death penalty or something, that's serious. You know, this is more of stealing someone's, well, and it would be property because if it was kidnapping, which is stealing, that is a death penalty. 5 through 6 deals with fire. And again, that's from neglect, and something happens where somebody else's property is destroyed or not taken care of. So there's the loss of property, there's the destruction of property, and then even 7 through 15, when you're having somebody watch over your property, if the goods go missing or if something happens to it, this is still, there's repercussions for this. And whomever Elohim declares wrong repays double to his neighbor. So based on the circumstances, these scenarios are set forth, and then the rules are given of how to respond to them. Yeah, and it even talks about the donkey, the ox, the sheep. If they were asked to be watched over and it's injured or is driven away, then you have to take the person's word, but if it is stolen from him, he has to repay it. So again, this is how people are going to deal with each other with this new society that's created. 16 through 27 actually touches on the financial responsibility of someone who entices a maiden who is not engaged and lies with her. He shall certainly pay the bride price for her to be his wife. If her father absolutely refuses to give her to him, he pays according to the bride price of the maidens. So again, there's any behavior, and apparently these were issues. This was something he had to talk about. Were these things learned from the nations? Is this just human behavior? I mean, the whole idea is him trying to elevate people to be a treasured possession. But to be that, you can't have this behavior ingrained in your heart. He wants to eliminate it. His special people are not going to act like this. Again, this is a way to train an entire nation of people how to interact and behave and look out and have the best actions towards each other. So the cases went from capital offenses to accidental property damage, meaning the fire. And then after that, there are 3 scenarios that are between Elohim and man that command a death penalty. No one is pressing charges, but the Beit Din must render a judgment. And that's verses 18, 19, and 20 of chapter 22. And these are all death penalties. Do not allow a practicer of witchcraft to live. Anyone lying with a beast shall certainly be put to death. He who slaughters to an Elohim, small e, except to Yahovah only, is put under the ban. Under the ban in verse 20 means to destroy utterly or to dedicate for destruction. Remember Samuel, when I forget who they were fighting, but they captured the people instead of putting them under the ban and killing them, and they heard the bleating of sheep in their ears. And it goes on. There's other stuff with that story, like the enemy he in sense gave mercy to, but when it ends up with the priests later on, that the priests that were in support of David, he slaughters. So he really had some mixed up judgment there, and he was giving compassion and mercy to ones who didn't deserve it, and ones that did deserve it. He didn't act that way. There's when you start seeing how the Father wants to behave, it's a little more insight to these stories that were given in the Torah. It was actually in the writings, but so 21 turns to an imperative, which is an urgent command, but changes that there is no punishment included. So the 18, 19, and 20, they call that imperative. This is going to happen. In Elohim, in the idea that the practicer of witchcraft, the one lying with the beast, and the one slaughtering to something other than Elohim, it is put to death. It's going to happen. Then the imperative turns to people, and it says, "Do not tread down a sojourner or oppress him, for you were sojourners in the land of Mitzrayim. Do not afflict the widow or the fatherless." And it goes on. There's a lot of instructions here. But it's telling you how to behave, and it's a choice of behavior, but it's not listing a consequence for that behavior. So the incentive for keeping this law is because we too were once strangers in the land of Egypt. That's what it starts out by saying, this next section here. Do not tread down the sojourner or oppress him, for you were sojourners in the land of Mitzrayim. Again, he's kind of reminding us of where we came from. Remember, it starts out with the rules for how to treat a servant. That's something that everybody is familiar with. And the idea is you know what it's like to be oppressed. You know what it's like to be mistreated. So don't do it to others, right? We can kind of call that the golden rule. We're familiar with that. So this type or this code of behavior continues all the way to 23:9. So this is starting in 22:21 and goes through 23 verse 9. And these codes, it's supposed to be by self-guidance. I mean, the idea is that you're told these things. You don't have a Beit Din enforcing this stuff. This is you relying on yourself, on what you've been told, and how you're going to treat each other. And this is where he's trying to grow you up. He's trying to mature you. He's telling you this is how to behave. Of course, he's going to watch over it because we know stories and things that happen in the future. But this is the idea. He nurtures us. We come to him as children, but we don't stay children. We grow and we learn. And we start behaving the way that he wants his treasured possession to behave. So this self-imposed direction is the concept for the type of society that our Father is wanting to shape. This is for his special nation. Remember? And also, nobody's doing this because of they need to be redeemed. All these people have been redeemed. They've all been brought out of Egypt. That's why this is like the bondservant of love. The whole idea is they've been saved. Now it's up to them. If they choose, if they want to do this, in which they've actually already said that in 19 verse 8, prior to the 10 Commandments, prior to Mount Sinai, all that Yahovah has spoken, we shall do. And we actually end up in chapter 24 with 2 more verses. All the words which Yahovah has spoken, we shall do. All that Yahovah has spoken, we shall do and obey. So again, this is a voluntary commitment to come into this covenant. And I don't know why man would think they can develop a better society than our Father has developed. The whole point would train ourselves to try and live this society. And wasn't that the idea of the millennial kingdom? Isn't that the idea of what we want to get to? This is who wants keys? Why lock your doors? When you can, there's a set of keys here. Does somebody know they lost keys? Did somebody claim those? There's keys. If anybody, Goner Records? Okay. All right. I should have known. Records. So they're there on the desk. All right. 23:9 ends with the ethical instructions. Ends this ethical, that's what it's kind of called here. These are ethical because it's you holding yourself accountable. So it's your own personal ethics as opposed to being instructed or forced. But these ethical instructions with the way it began. And do not oppress a sojourner, as you yourselves know the heart of a sojourner, because you were sojourners in the land of Mitzrayim. So it's kind of bookended by that statement. That is on page 22, 21, and 23, chapter 23, verse 9. So in between those things, it's really you and your heart and how you're going to deal with all these issues. Yeah, so these bookends, 22:21 and 23:9, have the common theme of living by a higher ethical standard. Previously, the courts would enforce punishment, but here Yahovah will deliver the punishment. I feel like I left something out there, because that should actually be referring to verses 18, 19, and 20 with the witchcraft, the one who lies with the beast, and the one slaughtering to other than Elohim. That is Yahovah enforcing the punishment there, as opposed to the Beit Din in the prior sections. In 22 also, this is 22:22, this is inside the ethical, oh no, I guess that is where it goes. Because it's saying, yeah, I forgot this part. In 22:22, if they cry out to me at all, I shall certainly hear their cry, and my wrath shall burn, and I shall kill you with the sword. Your wives shall be widows, and your children fatherless. So these ethical decisions here, he's also kind of dropping in, he's going to protect the least of our society. He is going to watch out for, do not afflict any widow or fatherless child. If you do afflict them, if they cry out to me, I shall certainly hear their cry. And that is verse 23 of chapter 22, and in verse 27 of chapter 22. And this is about taking a neighbor's garment as a pledge. You are to return it to him before the sun goes down, for that is his only covering, his garment for his skin. What does he sleep in? And it shall be that when he cries to me, I shall hear, for I show favor. So again, Yahovah is listening to the cries. And remember, that's kind of a point where we get to in our lives. I don't know how many of you, where you are in your walk, how many times have you truly heartfelt cried out to the Father? And he listens, he hears you, he will answer you, because he knows your heart and he knows what he's looking for. It might not be the way you want it answered, but he understands the level you're at, and he understands he's the one you're looking for, and he's going to show himself to you if you're searching for him, because he will present himself and show you that he is the Redeemer. He is the one that provides all substance for us, and he's going to teach us how to behave. Once we've hit that rock bottom, then we can be lifted up by his instructions. So in this instance, treating the poor and needy well is an issue that the courts cannot enforce, so Yahovah himself will intercede. Also, these less fortunate would be less likely to use a court system if they were wrong. These people might not have access to the court system, so again, he's going to come to their defense. Verse 27, yeah, I said, repeats the cry will be heard for mistreatment. Verse 28 through the end of the chapter are expectations of correct behavior for his people. Do not revile an Elohim, nor curse a ruler of your people. I mean, look at our political system today. We have two sides, and both sides are pretty adamant about what they dislike about the other side. But according to our Father, that is not how we're supposed to talk of people that are currently leaders, or people that, I guess, when they get into a leadership position, we're supposed to hold our tongue. We are not supposed to, as it says, don't curse a ruler of your people. Do not delay in giving your harvest and vintage. Give me the firstborn of your sons. So again, this is him saying, the expectations of how. So these are just some more things he lists of how the ethical behavior he wants people. It's not enforced by any, but by your own self-will, how any court system, I mean, but how you're to treat others. So we're always to show respect. We're to contribute our fair share. In this system that he has set up, the civil servants are only supplied by the contributions of the society. And we know it ends up with a Levitical system after the golden calf, but right here, give me the firstborn of your sons. Okay, I have this one up. And see, I've given the children of the Levites, this is from Numbers, Bamidbar 18:21. And see, I've given the children of Levi all the tithes in Israel as an inheritance in their return for the service which they are serving, the service of the tent of appointment. The only way that those people were sustained through food and through the blessings that they had at the temple were from the people. It was the tithes of the people that supplied all this, that kept the tabernacle going, that kept the temple going. This is the system he had set up, but it wasn't originally with the Levites, it was with the firstborn. So giving of the firstborn sons was the responsibility of each family. This would ensure an educator in each family to teach his laws. Think about that. If the oldest, how you couldn't not hear this stuff if people did what the father wanted. If the oldest firstborn male was given to the father in the sense that he became an educator, he became the one that was going to teach the family, all the family would have an opportunity to learn and hear about this stuff. That's how he wants his system set up. It's to ensure that no one is left out. He's including everybody in this. And then also the firstborn animals were to support the temple. As it goes on to say, give me the firstborn of your sons. Likewise, you're to do with your oxen and with your sheep. And he even gives it a time frame. It's to be with its mother 7 days. On the 8th day, you give it to me. So he's telling us how to be set apart to Yahovah. Chapter 23 starts by telling us to take a higher moral ground. 1 through 3 instructs judgment so it does not get corrupted. Excuse me. Do not bring a false report. Do not put your hand with the wrong to be a malicious witness. Do not follow a crowd to do evil, nor bear witness in a strife, so as to turn aside after many, to turn aside what is right. And do not favor the poor man in his strife. So whether this is for those, this is instructing you on the right way to judge things, but also it could be educating those who are going to be in the seat of judgment with those Beit Dins that have to make those other decisions. They're given some extra instructions. And it goes on to even talk about our heart. Despite what we think, we are to help our enemy and the one we hate. When you meet your enemy's ox or his donkey going astray, you shall certainly return it to him. When you see the donkey of him who hates you from lying under its burden, you shall refrain from leaving it. You shall certainly help him. So again, this is that higher moral ground. It might be really easy to be tempted if you're judging. It's really only up to you. So he's calling you to say, don't let your decision be swayed. It goes on a little bit later about that. But even in your heart, if you don't like somebody, that's irrelevant. The whole point is to help your brother, help your neighbor. And the point is, we're all made in the image of our Father. The idea of hatred and an enemy doesn't exist if you're helping those in the image of our Father. So we are to go out of our way to help one another. What would be outstanding behavior in a regular society is expected in a nation that represents Yahovah. And that's the whole point. We die to self. We become that bondservant, and we are literally representing Yahovah. We're representing the Father. So how we act and how we treat others, that's why we do it. It's not because of what's in our heart. It's because of how he wants his people to behave. If you behave this way, automatically you're his people. You are in covenant. He upholds his end of the covenant. We're the ones that have failed in the covenant. Keep far from false matters and do not take a bribe because it blinds and twists words. So again, it started out with the judging, talks about the hatred in your heart, and goes back to making sure it's even giving you reasons why your judgment might be twisted. So keep away from the false, and it's saying far away from false matters. And a bribe is going to blind you, and it's going to twist the words. Again, it's gotten to your heart, so who are you serving? The reminder of sojourning in the land of Egypt is repeated to remind them of their difficulty of being oppressed and to emphasize the sensitivity needed towards the less fortunate. This awareness is unique to the children of Israel as a code of behavior. How many times does he tell us that he is our Elohim, he rescued us out of Egypt? We hear that over and over again. We're supposed to remember it at the Passover. There's this instance of where we came from educates us as to not just a reminder of where we were, but is an empathy of how we're supposed to treat others. This is why it's set apart. This is why his people share the light. And his word is a light unto your path. So the whole idea to be the light is you have to know his word and display his word. Then we come to a time cycle that becomes established. And he's going into the 6 years. You sow the land, and you shall gather its increase. So in the Shemitah, the land rests every years, and then it would provide food for the needy. And that year it was resting. Those that are less fortunate, the poor, they can go and just glean out of the fields. Remember Ruth? She was in the fields gleaning. He also instructs that for the corners. But this happens in the Shemitah year too. The land rests every 7 years. Shabbat, there's a rest every 7 days, a day for the bondservant and for the stranger. So again, he's kind of hinting at here, this is really all for the less fortunate. 6 days you are to do your work. In the 7th day you rest, in order that your ox, your donkey might rest, and the son of your female servant and the sojourner be refreshed. So he's taken a lot into consideration to instruct behavior to care for the least among us. Then it lists 3 pilgrimage feasts. Matzah, unleavened bread. There's 7 days of eating unleavened bread. Shavuot is 7 weeks later. That is what it's calling the Feast of the Harvest, the wheat harvest. And it's actually talks about waving 2 loaves on the day after 7 complete Sabbaths, is how it's worded. And then Sukkot is instructed for 7 days, and we know there's an 8th day attached to it. So these festivals are an opportunity for all Israel to come before Yahovah regardless of status. Rich and poor alike get to present themselves before the Father and to celebrate about his bounty and his goodness. And it's kind of an equalization where status doesn't matter. Everybody's there to participate. And if you remember, we get into later the idea of the tithing for the widows and the orphans and the Levites. They're to be provided for. There's not a reason why somebody couldn't, just based on finances, approach these festivals or be considered part of it. Think of, I don't know what you call that, there's the camaraderie in the unity that is created by having a system like that. He makes everybody equal. He cares about the least, and he raises them up, and he helps you instruct you in your heart how to raise people up too. So if we group all these instructions, at the beginning we started with the altar and how to make an altar at the end of chapter 20, to make the slaughter place, to not go up it naked, to make it out of earthen, not cut stone. That is how Yahovah wants to be worshipped. Then we get into all these judgments with the Beit Din, and it's kind of like judgments over a social life, how we're all to interact with each other. And it's man judging man with the Beit Din. Then there's a little break in there about God and man. That's one where he flat out says, anyone that practices witchcraft is going to die. Anyone who lies with the beast is going to die. Anyone who slaughters Elohim, Yahovah Elohim, is put under the ban. This is Yahovah executing his judgment. There's no Beit Din necessary. It's set in stone. Then the ethical behavior is man judging himself, and that's 22 to 23. And then we end again with the feast of how to worship Yahovah. So this structure can be called a chiastic structure. It starts with kind of bookends and can point to a middle. That middle is just simply saying, I am Yahovah, have no others before me. I mean, really, when we go to the 10 Commandments, remember, that's how it starts out. I am Yahovah your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, out of the house of slavery. Have no other mighty ones against my face. And then he goes on to more instructions of how he wants to be treated. But these structures are all over Scripture, and they're a lot more visible if you can study some of the Hebrew. But people have picked these things out, and it's just fascinating because these things get brought out where we can kind of glaze over. It's just a jumble of rules, and it's a big bunch of them. But when you understand and look at, he's really, this didn't happen by accident. And there's a plan and a system he has, and the whole goal of this system is to be in covenant with him. This, what is referred to as Book of the Covenant. And there's a lot to get into about a lot more of it. But that's really just kind of going over these judgments. And it's a more simplified way to look at some of these instructions. If you can understand, it's with a house of judgment. It's how you judge yourself. It's how your own heart reacts and what the Father expects. So that's all I have for this. Does anyone have anything that they got out of it? Wendy? Mm-hmm. Yeah, we have to recognize, one, recognize we're in the dispersion, right? I mean, it didn't work out the way he wanted. We aren't all just in the land under the society he expects. And that's the idea, even when we get into later the what we call leprosy, the whatever disease that's called. But the idea that back then it happened. Now we can gossip, we can slander, and we'd have no repercussions from it. If there were repercussions, would people behave that way? I mean, the whole point is you can't, this isn't the land he established. We can't just go and stone somebody and kill them, you know?
So, if, for example, if someone shamed their parent, in whatever definition that
But-
is for, it says that you would be put to death. But we have Yeshua who's thinking, David, how does that work? That the father said he would put them to death.
Yeah, and he says, don't take vengeance, vengeance is mine. I mean, there's a lot. This is a whole study on this. I don't think I can give you a simple answer on that. I would say I wouldn't have a clear one. I think there's a multi-level answer to it. This is what his desire and his wishes are. It progressed to the point with his son coming and being our covering, you know, his blood sacrifice for what he did and to be covered with that. But I don't think it negates what the Father wants people to behave as. So in the future, when we're able to progress to the millennial kingdom, when we're able to be in the society where he is ruling and reigning, I don't think these instructions are going to go away. So how we deal with it now, I don't know. You know, the whole idea is they were looking forward to the Messiah, we're looking back to the Messiah. But the Messiah is the Word of God. So that's what we're looking at, is his Word. Daphne?
About like that in particular, because I don't know, I was rebellious and reading, so I'm thinking, well, that's the thing I think about. Like, Yeshua redeemed me from having to put that, not only in redeeming us back to Israel, but my point in saying that is, I don't think anybody on this walk now, like knowing we know and we're trying to live the right way, like we wouldn't do that now, right? So if it's from your past and you've been redeemed from everything that you did in your past, he has washed us clean from those sins that we did in the past. Even if it was something from the past, you don't have to.
Yeah, okay.
We're not still under that. I mean, that's not counted as our sin anymore. It's gone.
Yeah, see, there's so many aspects. Like that question when you were asking, I'm thinking of people out in the world and how they act and what's going on and, the witches and all the, but as a personal thing, no, we have to trust. He says our sins are as far away from the east as from the west. And there is that covering. And if he can't take care of these problems and you can be forgiven for whatever, he says you are. So you have to, and that's back, is he Elohim or not? Are you trusting him? Did he provide a way for us to be forgiven? And the whole point, bringing up the redemption, that's why the mention of these people were redeemed. We are redeemed. Just like them, they were brought out of Egypt. Just like them, we are brought out of bondage. The point of all these instructions is this is his ideal for his society to behave and how we live. That's why we're gathering on the Sabbath. It's the fourth commandment. And it says, remember the fourth commandment, because, and lists a reason why. And it's amazing, that's the one that's shoved to the side.
And, just to tack on, before we came to Torah, we didn't necessarily know Torah. So, we may have heard of it, but we didn't know the nitty-gritty, we didn't go through it.
Yeah, how's that worded? I wouldn't know sin if it wasn't for the Torah.
Right. And on top of that, even as we study from year to year, we still don't know Torah fully. We may know the letter of the law. We may not know the spirit of the law. And there's a completely different,
And that's,
so we have to be really careful and make sure that we're not focused on, just the letter of the law. We're thinking, got it, check.
exactly, yeah.
But understanding that he's going to continue to reveal more and more to us every single, that we go through it. And as we grow and as we mature and as we learn more. So that's part of
Yeah,
it.
and as he's working on our hearts, which is the sense of what you're talking about, to not just go by the letter of the law, that's why I think it's so important to pay attention to his heart. What is he revealing about himself with these instructions? I mean, this is just, he really, really cares for, like I said, the least in the society, and starts out with all these instructions to take care of them first. And we are to emulate him. We are to be like him. So that is what we're to do. I mean, there's people who think you're under the law they just have it so backwards, one, because of the word law, but his instructions, like how are his instructions not good? Dennis?
I like how you put that up there because, when you break that down right there, it's, to love Yahweh with all your heart, mind, soul, and strength, and to love your neighbor as yourself. To love Yahweh with all your mind,
Mm-hmm.
and to love your neighbor as yourself.
Yeah, there's a lot of people going through this parsha, and you can line it up with the Ten Commandments, and it does overlap.
It just gives you those two greatest commandments
Yeah.
right there, just right here, and then how to do them.
Mm-hmm.
I said it's such a beautiful thing. And when you go back to 22:25, and it's talking about how to loan money to the poor, yeah, I listened to a very long midrash on that, and the beauty of both sides. So the poor person doesn't want to be poor and ask for money. The rich person might not necessarily want to give his money to someone who is poor. But the compassion that it has to take from the rich man to give his money, and yet the humbleness of the poor person, at the end of this, the roles are reversed. Because the way this is acted out is every day the rich man has to go retrieve the poor man's clothes. The poor man doesn't have to come give you his clothes. You have to go get
Not
it.
retreat.
Yeah, in the morning, the rich man has to go get it from the poor man. So every day, you're having to go from your rich home to this poor man's home to grab the only thing he has, to hold it all day long. And then at the end of the day, you're to give it back to him.
Mm-hmm.
So if you have everything and you're going to someone who has nothing, how quickly is your heart going to change
Yeah.
to whether he even needs to pay it back?
I'm forgetting what it's called, but there's a term about your eye, and if you have a stingy eye or if you have a giving eye, and that's what it's revealing. It's revealing the heart.
And that's, in that commandment, it really shows your heart as to where you're at. Because the rich can live,
Mm-hmm.
Um,
And a lot of times too, that's why the rich have wealth. It's not for their own gain. It's so they can benefit others. That's the society he wants.
And then I always like that one with your donkey and the enemy. If you see your enemy's donkey, like if we're all raised in the world at one point in time, the majority of us, the adults in here, and every time somebody did something to you, you did something to them. Like it was never.
Hatfield and McCoy's.
Yeah, I mean, that's how you lived your life. And
Mhm.
you come into this and you start reading this from the Father, and he says, the guy that cut you off on the way here has a flat tire, you're supposed to help him change his flat tire. Because that changes your heart, but yet, really, even though you're work in progress, right, because you know the law, by you being willing to help someone who cut you off in traffic, his heart is going to be changed by your actions.
Mm-hmm.
So living through these commandments actually changes the hearts of those you come in contact with as much as it does without you having to say anything.
Yeah,
It's just
yeah.
out
And it's
front.
interesting that it's your enemy and the one who hates you. Even right there, it's both sides of the coin. It's not leaving something out. In the Hellenization that happened with the Greek society, look at the gymnasiums that were made, look at the sporting events that were made, and look at today with pick a sport and the rivalries that are created. You feel completely justified because my team wears blue, your team wears red, therefore we can fight. That's not in the Father's system. The whole point is unity. And everywhere, everything, as subtle as games are, as subtle as sports are in this world, it is meant to destroy the Father's heart and how he wants his family to behave. It's just, you start recognizing it, and you don't recognize it till you start looking at Torah. Anyone else? So next week we get into Teruma. It's about the Mishkan, and he has a system and a way he wants things built, and there's a lot of detail in it and a lot of instructions. And as much as you read what's going on, try and back up and look for patterns, look for systems that were not available. Like I said, this is called a chiasm. Chiasm. They're all over scriptures. They're mainly in the Hebrew. Try and dig and find some teachers who talk about this stuff. It's really fascinating. It's on a different level, but it simplifies stuff, and it just helps with the learning method for us, because we weren't blessed to grow up in this. I mean, there's a lot of instruction that we're trying to cram in these, every cycle, like Julie said, you just build and build and build on it, but we're kind of way behind. So, okay, let's move on to the repetition of the Shema. Shema Israel, Yehovah Eloheinu, Yehovah Echad, Baruch Shem Kevod, Malkuto, Leolam Vayed. Hear, O Israel, Yehovah Eloheinu, Yehovah is one. Blessed is the name of his glorious kingdom for all eternity. Amen. Someone wants to do the blessing over the bread and the wine? With Scarlett? Oh, Wendy, do you want to? Yeah, Wendy's going to do it. And Scarlett.
Baruch atah Yehovah, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, Berei pri hagafet. Amen. Blessed are you, Yehovah our Elohim, King of the universe, who creates the fruit of the vine. Baruch atah Yehovah, Eloheinu melech ha'olam, ha'motze lakabin ha'aretz. Amen. Blessed are you, Yehovah our Elohim, King of the universe, who brings forth bread from the earth. And taking bread, giving thanks, he broke it and gave it to them, saying, This is my body, which is given for you. Do this in remembrance of me.
After your prayer.
I have set watchmen on your walls, O Yerushalayim, all the day and all the night continually, who are not silent. You who remember Yehovah, give yourselves no rest, and give him no rest, till he establishes, until he makes Yerushalayim a praise in all the earth. Amen. Dear Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for the privilege of knowing your Torah, reading your Torah, and studying in it. Each time we do, we learn more and more about how beautiful you are, how beautiful your heart is. And we thank you so much that you continue to teach us. We thank you for Yerushalayim, and we ask you to continue to protect her. We want to give you no rest. We want to continue to pray for her in that time, that it will be a glory and a praise throughout all the inhabited earth. For all these things, we give thanks in Yeshua Messiah. Amen.
Yivarekeka Yehovah v'yishmareka, Ya'er Adonai ponav eleka v'huneka, Esa Yehovah ponav eleka v'yasem leka shalom. May Yehovah bless you and guard you. May Yehovah make his face to shine upon you and show favor unto you. May Yehovah lift up his face upon you and give you his peace. Thus I shall put my name on the children of Israel, and I myself shall bless them. Amen.